sprouted up. Now, here in Matthew 24, it talks about one identifying mark of true Christians. So if we are living in the last days, and nearly all pastors of the churches, of Protestant churches and even the Catholic Church, acknowledge that we are likely to be living in the last days when Jesus is due to return. But there was something foretold that has to happen. Well, lots of things. Matthew 24. Now, I will look into this a little bit more, but I'm just highlighting 2 verses from this today to keep it this brief. He says here, the good news of the kingdom will be preached in all the inhabited earth for a witness to all the nations, then the end will come. Now, Jesus instituted the preaching work and trained his apostles, so we know what their message was and what their goals were, to tell other people and help them, convert them into becoming Christians as well. Now, did you notice it says it will be, then the end will come? So the preaching of the good news must come. The good news of the kingdom. Now, who is doing it? Obviously, the Watchtower Society that became Jehovah's Witnesses in 1931, they claim that they're doing it. Now, actually, most people, non-Jehovah's Witnesses, will quite acknowledge 2 things about Jehovah's Witnesses. There's 1,000 languages, they're everywhere, they get in our way, they're preaching the good news. Whether people agree with the specific message and the manner in which it's done it is another point of discussion. But they will acknowledge that. And the other thing they'll acknowledge, that the kingdom is the kingdom of God, and God has a name. And Jesus said that we must make holy his Father's name. In fact, his very first direction was to his disciples to pray for our Father who is in heaven, make holy his name, or hallowed, Jehovah. So that's the only religious organisation that's associated worldwide with that name and with the preaching. Now, is there anyone else doing it? There are small groups doing bits and bobs, and there are individual pastors who run ministries, and they're very good. So that's good. There was a man called Derek Prince. I've watched a couple of bits about him. He's a very good pastor and a preacher and a Bible student. He was doing his best to preach the good news. So there are individuals preaching the good news. You could call them other slaves, because Jesus did mention a number of slaves. Now, the one point about the slave here, because he's saying there's no proof that that Jehovah's Witnesses are that slave, you see. There's no proof. Well, preaching the good news is a very, very, very important proof. And that, in fact, is the key. 1 is preaching the good news of the kingdom and doing it. 2 is preaching the truth and revealing the name of God and revealing who his Son is. Verse 45. He says here, who really, verse 45 of Matthew 24, he says, who really is the faithful and discreet slave, whom his master appointed over all his domestics to give them their food at the proper time? Now, of course, Jehovah's Witnesses claim that Jesus did that in 1919 with the Watchtower organisation. Happy is the slave if his master coming finds him doing so. So the question here is, if Jesus chose the Watchtower Society as a faithful slave, then there is a period of time when that slave will be inspected. Now, Jehovah's Witnesses used to teach that that slave was inspected back in 1919, but since 2013 they've changed the rule. They've changed it. They acknowledge now that the day of judgment is ahead. Jesus is judging who he will save at the day of judgment, the sheep and the goats. And it says here, he also inspects the slave. And then it says, truly I say to you, he will appoint the slave. If he's passed his inspection, he will over all his belongings, because that slave will actually be part of the bride of Christ, will become the bride of Christ, because most of that bride group those who are begotten to Jesus as his brothers are already in heaven, and his kingdom is nearly ready to start fully ruling. So the identifying mark that proves that they are the worldwide religion doing Christ's will and that they became a slave is evidenced by their actions, by the historical evidence. And Jehovah's Witnesses fulfill that historical evidence like no other. Thank you very much. Take care. Busy time for everybody now. It's coming into December. Bye bye.